The writer of this has a 130 IQ. Here, IQ of 80. Was this written by an introvert? Could this be a psychopath? Well, I hope not, because this is my handwriting. But can you really make psychological inferences based on someone's handwriting? Graphology is the science of determining personality traits based on handwriting. Up until the 80s, this was widely used in European corporations for hiring decisions. Imagine losing a job because your G's looked weird. Today, we check if these claims hold up scientifically. Spoiler, they mostly don't. But there are some insights about you derivable from your handwriting. Now, before we get into personality claims, let's start with what handwriting can reliably tell us. Because there is a field where handwriting analysis actually has a scientific basis. In forensic science, handwriting isn't used to analyze a character, it's used to confirm your identity. Forensic document examiners study things like letter spacing, stroke pressure, and writing rhythm to determine whether two samples were written by the same person. Of course, there is a problem. Even one person's handwriting can differ. Take your signature, for example. Of course, we always try to make it look the same. Yet you've probably been in a situation too, where you kind of messed up your signature and it looked a bit different. So what's to stop someone from imitating your signature well enough that it still passes as genuine? Luckily, every individual develops a unique motor pattern when writing, almost like a fingerprint of movement. Even when you try to disguise your writing, micro-details like the angle of your pen, the timing of strokes, or how you connect the letters tend to stay consistent. Take a look at these examples. I wrote this with my left hand, which I normally use, and this with my right hand. I mean, of course, it looks a bit more scrawled because I'm not used to writing with my right hand. Yet the general shape of the letters is somewhat consistent. Studies using digital handwriting tablets show that these features are remarkably stable. In fact, algorithms can match handwriting samples with over 95% accuracy. There's the key difference. Forensic handwriting analysis looks at how you write, not who you are. It can reveal your handedness or detect forgery, but it won't tell anyone if you're creative, shy, or dominant. That's where graphology crosses from science into speculation. Now, the basic idea of graphology is of course that my personality influences my handwriting, and that this information is stored in the way I write. Now, by analyzing the handwriting, a graphologist claims to be able to detect this information and infer the personality or other characteristics of the writer. So let's check these claims. Claim 1. Personality. This was like the big promise, that certain handwriting features revealed your personality. It was said that large letters mean that you're extroverted and confident, small letters introverted and detail-oriented, rightward slant emotional and outgoing, leftward slant reserved or defensive. I mean, it sounds convincing, because it feels like there should be a connection between these things. But decades of research have tested these exact claims, and the results are surprisingly consistent. There is no reliable link. Studies comparing handwriting samples with standardized personality tests, like the Big Five, found that graphologists performed no better than chance at identifying traits like extroversion or conscientiousness. In fact, when researchers gave the same handwriting samples to random people, their personality guesses were just as accurate as those of professional graphologists. Claim 2. Job performance. Well, now we come back to the start of the video, because people thought handwriting could predict job success, leadership ability, or honesty. In 1980s France, up to 80% of companies used graphology in hiring, €1 billion pseudoscience, because systematic reviews found no predictive validity for job performance or aptitude. Fun fact, the best single psychological predictor for job success is still intelligence. If you want to see a video about that, write that down into the comments. If there's one part of our handwriting that feels especially personal, it's our signature. So it's no surprise that graphologists believe it reveals our inner self too. A big signature supposedly means you're confident. A small one? Humble or insecure. Underlining your name shows determination. Well, sounds poetic, but science says otherwise. A few studies found tiny correlations. For instance, people with larger signatures scored slightly higher on narcissism scales, but those effects vanished once you're controlled for gender or culture. In other words, your signature might say something about how you want to be seen, not who you really are. So if most of this is bullshit, why was graphology so popular and still seems so compelling? Well, this is where the real psychology steps in, and it has mostly to do with two phenomena: the Barnum effect and the hindsight bias. The Barnum effect, named after the American showman P.T. Barnum, describes how people accept vague, general statements as deeply personal, especially when they sound flattering. You've seen this in horoscopes, your independent but value connection. Sounds like you, right? Graphology works the same way. When someone says your wide loops show creativity, or your sharp angles ambition, your brain highlights the parts that fit and ignores the rest. This is exactly how some of history's most famous handwriting analyses gained credibility. Graphologists claimed that his handwriting revealed his narcissism, obsession, and inferiority complex. Einstein's writing supposedly showed imagination and freedom of thought. But of course, those readings were done after the world already knew who they were. So the hindsight bias plays a role as well. The tendency to perceive past events as having been more predictable than they really were. The traits weren't discovered in the writing, they were projected onto it. So, is there anything that can be derived from your handwriting? Well, your identity in general, as in forensics, but there are also some characteristics that can be predicted with fair accuracy. For example, forensic studies can often tell whether someone's left or right-handed simply from the stroke direction and the way certain letters tilt. Even our education, language and culture leave subtle traces. Older French and German handwriting styles, for instance, differ systematically in slant and spacing, just from how children were taught to write. Also, some ideas from graphology have even seen a little revival, with some studies using machine learning and advanced algorithms to determine emotional states like anxiety or depression, gender or Alzheimer's. But although they report high accuracy, ranging from like 70 to 99% for Alzheimer's, these studies are still quite small, so I guess we'll have to see what direction the research will take. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe for future videos on psychology.